So I think people were interested in list building videos, and I know I've done a couple of these, but I wanted to lay everything out here while I'm sitting around at the gaming store waiting for my opponent to show up, just to talk about what I've got possible in this list that I put together. This is Savage Wave, and the options here, obviously there's more figures here that I could fit in a list, but this is my, what I'm calling the Alpha Dogs list, because it's got the dogs in it and is an Alphas list. So this is kind of my options. Now, the reason I have everything laid out is because I use all of these figures in lists anywhere from 70 to 100 rice. I don't use all of them in any of those lists, but what I use kind of differs a little bit. So the options I've got, and the dogs form the basis of both lists. So the alpha on the left, and the 4 kaihei on the right are the basis of the list. I like them. They're fun to play. They look cool, and they're tough. So it's a good place to start. Now, the Alphas part of this is fairly handy. Here's the Alphas card. See if I can get it where it's not a glare. So I get a 1 rice deduction for each Oni in the list. I can choose a friendly Oni, and that model gains terror, which means that if your opponent makes a successful bravery test, they have to re-roll it. And then the first time an Oni gets proned, I can remove the marker, which against certain armies is absolutely huge. And so I get animals, Oni, slaves, and yokai. No bakemono. So my options here are slaves, animals, and Oni. So for the Oni, what I've picked is first of all Yusha, because Yusha is basically designed to support the dogs. His abilities, see if I get that in focus. He's got command animal, which I haven't quite figured out what use that would be, since the animals, maybe if you're using different animals or you didn't have the alpha dog, that would be useful. But with the alpha dog, I don't know that it's all that useful. However, he does have inspiration, which is for 2 key, he can give a nearby model of a less rice cost +1 attack die or combat die. And he's also got Spur On, which is cool with the dogs because, in effect, it removes their inability to interact with objectives, among some other things. So he's really nice, and in a pinch can allow your dogs to manipulate simple influence objectives, which could be huge, especially in an army where you have 5 animals. Now, the alpha does not have that restriction. So you'll notice on the dogs, here we are, they have aloof, and aloof is what prevents them from interacting with objectives like idols and things. The alpha is not aloof. So the alpha, as far as I know, can interact with objectives. So, but Yusha being able to boost the dogs and also being able to remove their aloof effectively is really helpful. And he's an Oni. He's not the best Oni, but he's got 3 dice. He's got a ton of wounds. He's got brutal 1 and strong and tough and Oni rage and indomitable 1, fear 6. I mean, so he's got all the Oni tricks. He's just not very strong. He only has +1 to his damage rolls. So, but aside from that, he's pretty darn good. And he does gain 2 key, so he gets a decent amount of key. Zuba is not specifically made to go with the dogs, but I really like him because of future sight primarily, that allows him to spend 2 key and get the ability to have tactician and remove the other side's tactician. So in the middle of the game, especially when you desperately need it, your odds of going first become much better. He also can throw his hammer and get sweep attack 0, which means he doesn't do any damage, but he prones the opponent. which is terrific with the dogs because the dogs get bonuses against prone models. And again, he's got brutal 1, he's got slam attack 1, powerful attack 1, he's got +3 to his damage roll. He is strong, which means, of course, he's rolling 3 dice instead of 2 for damage and picking the highest 2. And he's got tough and only rage, and he's got a charging bonus as well. So Zuba's just a really nice model. He's a little beefier than Yusha in combat, and he works really well with the dogs. And then, of course, over here, we have our choice of Oni slaves. We've got 2 regular slaves on the left, and we've got Jun on the right. The advantage of Jun is that he's a named model, so you can make him your Vim if you want him to, which you can't do with the Oni slaves. I accidentally did it, I think, in an earlier battle report, and somebody pointed out to me that because they weren't unique, you couldn't do it. So I got Jun. He's only a couple of points more, and he does give me that option. The Oni slaves are nice not only because they can sacrifice themselves for the Oni, but they can, of course, manipulate objectives. And this Oni slave here, the first one I have done, has just been a killer of magicians like you would not believe. He has killed so many mages, it's not even funny. And if you look, you'll notice their pole arms are not the same. That's because this one is just constantly broken. If I touch it, you see his hand. Oh, well, sure, now it's not doing it. But his hand is actually not glued to the wrist. It's been glued to the wrist about 16 times, and it keeps coming off. So when I made the second one, I decided to modify the pole arm, make it shorter. There's actually a brass pin connecting the new blade to his hand, so that back one isn't going to go anywhere. It's not going to break. Eventually, I will get around to doing the same operation on this one, just because, just storing this bends the pole arm. And while it looks cool, it is a pain in the butt, and it's not very practical. So I am going to fix that. So to go along with this, so at 100 rice, I have all of this, and then I can either have these 2 guys and 1 point for a card, or I can take Jun and have 5 points for a card. And I think I would rather have Jun and the 5 points, because I can do a lot with cards in those 5 points. At 85 rice, Zuba isn't in anything except the 100-point list. At 85 rice, I have everything else. I've got the 3 slaves and probably 5 points for cards, I think, if my calculation is right. And then at 70 rice, I've got everything here except I think I only have 1 slave, but I still have a slave. So that's why within the context of this alpha dog list, all of these models are used at one point or another. Now, as far as the cards that I like, I think these 3 right here are my favorite, but I have a couple of standbys depending on how I feel. I love Spirit of the Consumed. If I have Zuba, I put it on Zuba, because that way he can use his Future Sight every turn and still accumulate an extra key for whatever else he might want to do with it, especially for healing. When he kills something, he can drop that extra key point and pick up a couple of points of health. If I don't have Zuba, I give it to Yusha, who also has lots of good ways to spend it. It keeps me being able to do Inspiration and Spiran on a regular basis. Hodia, and it also means the other nice thing about this is it doesn't just get you 1 extra key, it actually changes your key statistics. So if you have to do a challenge test, you're rolling 3 dice rather than 2, which is really handy. Hodai's coin, of course, is a good one, another 2-pointer. Lets you re-roll 1s in challenge tests, at least until you re-roll a 1 into a 1. That usually goes to one of the Oni as well, though I suppose I could give it to the animal. I don't know, is there a reason you can't give equipment to an animal? Anyway, it usually goes to whichever of the 2 Oni I have in the list. And then Grace of the Kami I like, because for a test, if you really need it, you can actually count the 1s as 1s. However, there's a couple of really close options, and I don't even know if I'd call them second. They're because I've done them both. The Vial of Radiant's Breath is a riot. There's nothing like a flying 7-inch move Oni to make your day. It's just hilarious. So I really like that one. I play that one often. And the other one is Balance, and that is particularly good if you're playing, I don't know, like Ito or Prefecture or Temple, where you have a lot of guys that are able to re-roll their dice. And when you really need it, you can play this card, and at least for a turn, you get a break from that. So I think I have 5 really good cards, 3 2-pointers and 2 1-pointers to fill out the list. So there we go. Now we're back in focus. So that's my Alpha Dogs list, and it's been pretty fun and pretty challenging for people to play against. The dogs all having group activation, and also having not combo attack, coordinated attack can be really brutal. And then you get the boosts and the nice synergy between the Oni and the dogs, and it just all works out really nice. So I really like it. It's fun, and it's interesting, and it is definitely challenging for my opponents to play. So what I'm working on now is I want to get a second list out of my Savage Wave. Now, I'm not going to do what I did with the Tengu, which is buy all the Savage Wave models, though, to be honest, I have a lot of them. I've got two of the really big, physically big Oni that I haven't painted yet. But what I'm going to do is, so I've got the Alpha Dogs list, that's this one. Well, I'm going to keep the dogs in the center, but instead of the Alpha list, I'm going to do a Thousand Eyes Bakemono list. So I'm going to call it Dogs and Frogs rather than Alpha Dogs, because the Bakemono are kind of froggy looking. And I've got 7 Bakemono. I've got 4, 2 beaters, 2 spearmen, track. I can't remember everybody's name. I got the samurai one, the ninja one, and the guy with the hat and the bat that he's carrying on his arm. And that'll be interesting because the Bakemono, of course, group activate with Thousand Eyes, as part of their deal. So in essence, I'll be able to move all 11 models. That will be at 100 rice, that's 11 model army. And I'd be able to move all 11 models and do something with each one of them with 2 activations, which is just a riot. I have no idea whether it's going to be any good or not. A friend who I trust helped me build it, and so I think it's going to be good if I learn how to use it. But right now, I'm just excited about painting those Bakemono, because I love the figures. So you'll see that soon, hopefully, because they're all ready to go. I got the bases all built and everything pinned, and I've got a video, if you haven't seen it already, on pinning small models. So I show how I pin the arms on all the little Bakemono, and maybe that'll be a help to some of you with some of the older, more fiddly models. So anyway, that's it. So that's my Alpha Dogs list. Thank you for sitting and joining me. If you want to make comments on what you think you like about it, or what you think might work better, or just what you think might be an interesting experiment, I'm wide open. I do not put myself forward as an expert in Bushido. I'm just the guy with the camera and a loud mouth. So we'll see you later. Hopefully I'll get this game in tonight. I'll get it on film, so you'll be able to see battle reports soon. You guys take care. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Gitsapalooza.